Real quick, for those of you that are either starting or planning to start your drive to Indianapolis, reports, my boys ABC 3340, Johnny Congdon and Fletcher Tubbs telling me north of Nashville, east of Nashville, everything seems good. So the roads seem to have cleared well. A number of listeners and viewers have tweeted us the same thing. So that's good news if you're thinking about driving to Indy anytime in the next 24 to 48. Bruce Feldman is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. What's up, Bruce? How are you?
Look at you doing traffic updates.
Traffic on the 8s.
Full-service show.
Full-service show, yeah. Bruce, people are worried, man. I mean, Nashville got slaughtered with snow last night about the time everybody was going to be driving up through there.
And, Bruce, you know the history of Auburn and Alabama being in these games. It's always a southern ice or snowstorm when we're all trying to get out of town to go to Pasadena or the desert or wherever.
It really is crazy.
All the way back to 2010, I think.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who grew up in a miserable cold weather place, I love seeing pictures of it. I have some friends in Tennessee who are tweeting out pictures. I like, that looks awesome. And I always remember it stinks to have to drive in it, though.
Bruce is with Fox and The Athletic. He's also a New York Times bestseller, and you can follow him on Twitter at Bruce Feldman CFB.
And technically an employee of New York Times right now, right?
Well, yeah, I guess so.
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. You did a very interesting piece where you talked to coaches that are familiar with Alabama and Georgia and got their view on this game. I want to start with the Alabama side. When you talked to those coaches, did you find a level of surprise that Alabama was able to pull off what they pulled off the first go-around?
Yes. There was a bunch of people, and what's interesting here is I had a couple of staffs who actually played both teams. But you have a lot of crossover. And one particular coach, who was an SEC coach, said, I was pretty much shocked that Alabama was able to beat them. Now, a few other guys made the point that, you know what, the Georgia players knew win or lose, they were going to be in the playoff. Not to make excuses for them, and this is like not a Georgia coach saying this, but it was just like there's probably a letdown element of it, whereas, you know, this was a team that, for whatever reason, I think people were really surprised that the Alabama offensive line, which is nowhere near as good as it was last year, was able to hold up well. I mean, there were no sacks for Bryce Young, whereas LSU overwhelmed them. Now, look, LSU threw some stuff at them they didn't expect, and they were way more aggressive with nothing to lose. But I think that's what people were really kind of like a little bit stunned by, that this Alabama team was able to do what they did, not just win, but whip Georgia like that.
You know, and Bruce, the overwhelming theme that you continue to hear from everyone is it's so difficult to beat a team twice in one season, but how often do we actually see teams play twice in a season?
Well, I live on the West Coast, and it wasn't hard for Kyle Whittingham and Utah to hammer Oregon twice. Now, I think what goes into it that's interesting is these staffs know each other really, really well. And I had an offensive line coach who was like so in the weeds on what he was fascinated by, what kind of adjustments, even what will Bill O'Brien try to do. Does he throw some wrinkles in because a lot of stuff worked to know that there are counter punches coming? And I think because there's so much familiarity, I mean, look, it is really hard to beat a team twice. It's even harder to do all the crazy stuff Nick Saban has pulled off while he's been the head coach at Alabama, winning title after title, not getting in place, and all these other things. So I don't know. I mean, I'll say this. I had told myself I was never going to pick against Nick Saban, and as long as he's the coach at Alabama. And then after working on the story, and I talked to like 16 different coaches who played against Georgia, and I ended up being convinced that, all right, maybe this is the time that they're going to beat them, and I'll probably be wrong.
I'm surprised when I look at Georgia just getting off the bus at how big and strong and fast and long their linebackers are. Were you totally surprised that unit in particular wasn't more disruptive? And I know it could have been game planning and scheming like that, but that to me is an elite unit. Will Anderson aside for Alabama, for Nakobe Dean and across the front seven of Georgia there, were you surprised that they weren't more disruptive in this game?
I was. I mean, the one thing that Alabama has, not just the one thing, but one of the biggest things that they did have, though, is they have a special quarterback, right? And it wasn't like Georgia had seen that. And I think one of the things, and this comes up a lot in this Georgia story that I did, was as awesome as that front seven is, the back end is really susceptible. The safeties are not great in coverage, and even one of the coaches I talked to a couple days ago was like, I don't think their cornerbacks are really that good. They don't, one guy they don't think plays with a lot of confidence. The other one, they think you can run by him. Now, look, it's going to be a little different. There's no John Mechie this time around, and I'm sure you will see Georgia make some adjustments. It's just interesting because that Alabama offensive line, how well will they hold up this time? I mean, that's where it's going to be, because I think, we saw them absolutely destroy what was supposed to be a very good Michigan offensive line. It won the Joe Moore Award. Now, they don't have anybody who's like Evan Neal on that group. It plays well together. But they didn't have the receivers that could threaten Georgia. Well, obviously Jamison Williams could. And obviously they have a quarterback who can buy time and can really make a lot of off-platform throws. And a lot of people I talked to this week, or at least a few people, said that they think Bryce Young actually throws better on the move than he does from the pocket. So, maybe this will play into Bryce Young's hands. I don't know. I mean, the other part of this too is, for as great as the Georgia front seven is, the best front seven guy actually doesn't even play for them. He wears 31 for Alabama. So, it's not like either of these teams are Cincinnati or Michigan where they're punching up. I mean, Alabama, yeah, they're a slight underdog, but they have the better quarterback and they have the best defensive player on the field. And they have the best coach of all time. So that's a lot of good things to have in your pocket to try to make it two in a row.
Those are certainly pluses. Bruce Feldman is with us, the Athletic Fox Sports, at Bruce Feldman CFB on Twitter. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. What do those opposing coaches say about Will Anderson? I'm curious. A guy that's not even draft eligible, but in a game of national championship teams is arguably the best or second best player on the field.
Oh, they think he's the best player on the field. If it was up to the guys, and I ended up talking to 10 guys who coached against Alabama, if they had Heisman votes, sorry, Bryce Young, you're going to have to win it after he leaves. And, they were, what I heard a bunch was it's not even close that he's the best defensive player in the country. No disrespect to Aiden Hutchinson, not even close. One of the guys I talked to, who's an offense coordinator, said he's like Derek Thomas. And you started to hear the argument. It was like this guy had coached against Myles Garrett. He was like, Myles Garrett was incredibly disruptive in the pass game, but we're like, let's run at him. This guy you can't run at. And I think even the line coaches who, study him on film before they play him were saying he is so much more violent and disruptive with his hands. It's not just like great get off, but just unblockable, right? And cause so much chaos for them in the run game. You could make a strong case, and he's still not draft eligible. It's only year 2 in Tuscaloosa, that this might be, of all the great defensive players Nick Saban has had in this run at Alabama, this might be the best defensive player that they've had there in the Nick Saban era. I don't want to say, the comparison to Derek Thomas was something one of the coaches made, but just in terms of the Saban era, if you're the best defensive player Nick Saban has coached in Tuscaloosa, man, that is a heavy statement.
Hey, Bruce, away from that game Monday night, Lincoln Riley will make his USC debut against Rice next year. Starting quarterback for that game, Jackson Dart or Caleb Williams?
Oh, you got right into it. I would be surprised. When you said Rice, I'm like, where is he going with this? I would be surprised if Caleb Williams doesn't end up reuniting with him. I mean, everything I've heard is that his dad and one of the advisors who's close to the Williams family, is all about how can you get him most NFL ready to hit the ground running. They believed in Lincoln Riley enough to go there out of the gate. He had a really strong freshman year once he overtook Spencer Rattler. I would think he will end up back with him at USC, and because of the portal, he'll be able to bring like one of his top receivers is a really fast slot receiver, who's a freshman out of Florida. I would think that, from what I've been told, that kid wants to go wherever Caleb goes. I don't want to say it's a blank canvas because USC is not. Their roster is not good. My TV crew did their UCLA game late in the year. They're really bad, but Caleb Williams can fix that at least to some degree. And I think guys will go to follow him. And to me, that is the favorite of the. If you were to do odds, I would feel like if you said it's USC or the field for Caleb Williams, my hunch is, and I don't know this for a fact, USC would be the place I would expect him to end up at.
You sort of rocked the college football world the other day with your story at The Athletic about Jim Harbaugh and interest maybe from Harbaugh in the NFL and the NFL in Harbaugh. I guess the big question around the country was, is it posturing to get the best possible deal still at Michigan, or is there real interest there? After that has now marinated for a couple of days, do you think Jim Harbaugh is back next year at Michigan?
I think it's 50-50. I really think it's, everything I was told, both on the Michigan side and even from NFL people, was Jim Harbaugh has real interest in some of these potential job openings. Remember, he broke in as a coach with the Raiders. I'm told he's still pretty close to Mark Davis, the owner. They have a good quarterback in Derek Carr, and also the timing might be ideal in terms of, hey, if he slayed the dragon with Ohio State, he whipped the Buckeyes, won the Big Ten for the first time in like almost 20 years for Michigan. That timing might be real. Also, Jim Harbaugh has never been anywhere. This is the longest he's been at one coaching stop. He's never been anywhere more than 4 years, either at Stanford or the Niners, and he's been there 7 years. If the Raiders is it, maybe even the Bears, I was told. I think it's real, and it's funny. One of the things that I glanced at my mentions after that story started to blow up, and I saw a couple people going, yeah, that's from his agent. I don't even know who Jim Harbaugh's agent is. I don't even know if he has one. This isn't like there's a Jimmy Sexton situation behind the scenes. There's, that's not this case. I'm not saying that Jim Harbaugh is definitely leaving. Remember, he took way less money. He got a lot of it back in incentives, and then he donated that money to a lot of staff members who either lost their jobs or had to take massive pay cuts in the wake of the pandemic. So I don't think it's really a money thing. I think it's just like, where do I want to be? He's 58. I had always heard he wanted to go back to the NFL at some point. Maybe this is that time.
Do you believe Bill O'Brien is in Tuscaloosa next year?
I don't. I think he will get another job. Like, he's done a really good job at a place that had to replace 5 first-round picks off the offense. My guess is he either lands an NFL head coaching job, or maybe he ends up being the guy who ends up at Michigan. I mean, my hunch is he will get some other job because there's going to be a bunch of vacancies. He did a good job as the head coach of the Texans. Maybe people didn't like how he did, as the GM and the personnel side, but and I think having a year around Saban, and he's obviously proven he's done a really good job there. I think that bodes well for him.
Bob in our Farmfolio chat room, Bruce wants to ask you, do you think the Texas A&M coaching staff will show up for the ESPN Megacast or cancel right before like they did the Gator Bowl?
Wow.
Ouch.
That's the kind of mood we're in down here in SEC country, man.
That's what happens when weather gets bad down there.
That's right. That's right.
People trapped inside. It's too cold. All right, he is Bruce Feldman. Go read him at The Athletic. See him on Fox, at Bruce Feldman, CFB on Twitter. And he's got several New York Times bestsellers from college football that are all fantastic. So go get those. Bruce, thank you so much for the time. Take care.
Take care, guys. Enjoy the game on Monday night.
All right, thank you. Bruce with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.